So opposed to having to change certain things every time you do an analysis, you can adjust the default settings, which happens to be the very first button in the Nastran tab in the ribbon. So by selecting default settings, you'll notice that the general tab here, what's the wide field format, grid points? Do we want to auto update Nastran files? What's the solution settings? Do we want to prompt or do we want to reset any dismissed warnings? So certain warnings will pop up and you'll actually have the option to say, never show this to me again. That's what this reset is for. It's just, let's start showing me everything. Right now I'm not logging everything, but maybe I'd like to log every crash. So if something doesn't go right and it's, tends to maybe repeat or happening more often than it should, we can log that, which would be very valuable information to provide to Autodesk if we're looking for support. Now looking at the display options, notice that there's subsections within here. So here's the display options, here's the nodes. I can change in both cases. So on the display options, maybe by default we don't want to see the min-max on the contour, and maybe we don't want to see the concentrated masses. When I'm rendering, perhaps I'd like to optimize the graphics for fast rendering. And undeformed edges, maybe I don't want it to be red. Maybe I'd like to have it be this pink color because red is what I use for selection. So that's from a display mode. On the nodes here, do we want to see the nodes and do we want to display the labels? From an elements perspective, do we want to display the labels? And then what information do we want to see about it? Post-processing, are we going to automatically plot? Should we automatically load the results? And what's the number of frames and the mode? Report generation, default unit, or is there a certain unit that we always want to use? When we're looking at linear static, right? Here's some information about the report that goes with it. So you can see the various options that you can modify when you're working with the report. Now, if I take a look at the tree options, so the tree options is our model tree. You can see that the buckets that it has in there. So perhaps what we'll do is we'll turn off loads, connections, and damping. And for a mesh model, we'll turn off elements. So I'm going to click OK, and what we're going to see is that the tree has updated, and that information that I selected to turn off, notice is no longer available in the tree. Now I can still make changes to it, still modify, but I have to use the ribbon. So just if there's certain things that you tend to never use and it's kind of cluttering up the model tree, we can use our default settings to change that. So if I go to my tree options, notice I'm able to quickly flip back to the defaults, or perhaps let's check all or uncheck all. So we'll click OK, and then what we'll see is that information is going to be back into the tree. So as I zoom down here, we can see that information's back in there. So those are your default settings because it becomes the default regardless of the analysis that you're in. And you obviously can change them as projects change or your preferences change. And again, it's just the first button in the ribbon.